Hi everybody. Welcome to the new live, number 16 if I'm not mistaken. In this sort of sunny, cloudy afternoon, we are going to talk with Liviu about his practice as an artist and his interest also as a person. And this is actually our second episode from the series of the artist talks. Apparently, a lot of you enjoyed the one that we had with Natalia last week. So we're going to continue today. We're going to have Liviu. Next week we're probably going to have Jake or someone else to join us. So Liviu just joined. So let's see if we can. And yeah. So hi.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Good. I was waiting for this moment to talk.
Wonderful.
How are you?
So a little bit of backstory. Liviu is actually here to visit us. He came from Romania just last week, and he's been exploring the city and the gallery a little bit. So I was thinking I'm gonna give maybe a small introduction about your practice for those who are not familiar with. And if you want to correct me or add things while I talk, you just tell me,
Okay.
And hopefully we're gonna get some questions during the live in the chat. And yeah, that's it. And let's see what comes along.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
Okay, so for those who are not familiar with what Liviu does as a practice, are you comfortable with the term sculpture?
Oh yes,
You
yes.
make sculpture?
Yeah.
Okay. And he usually uses ready-made objects. You make ready-made objects with democratized materials and found materials. Personally, the ones that I really like from you are the bigger installation, as you well know. And your practice revolves a lot around the relationship between the man and its environment, both in the natural sense, as in nature, and both with architecture and concrete and constructions in general. And just to refresh a little bit, I was reading again the description of the various projects that you made, and I was very fascinated on how you are fascinated by the process of decay, especially with material, on how buildings are within times are taken down from their purpose. Like they're built, then they have a purpose, and when they're abandoned, sort of nature reclaims this kind of space and this kind of material, and then you take them, you take these pieces and make like a synthesis sort of this process. And I was particularly fascinated and particularly struck by the first compositions that you made, that you were incorporating also like natural elements such as branches and flowers and things that you can find easily in nature and especially in your environment, in combination with other like tiles and things like construction materials in general, and how they became like a whole story behind it. So something that is more than some of its parts. It has a lot more to tell than that. So I really like those. And I especially found how fascinating it was that you had the ability to sort of synthesize in one piece or in a project your own exploration of the architecture and the environment wherever you would have a residency or a commission project or where you would found yourself. So you actually start from what I saw, you were starting from your memories as a kid growing up in Romania, and then you sort of took the same approach, the same practice when you were in Berlin, or you were visiting other towns in Romania and so on. And yeah, so I wanted to, my first question is, how do you approach this exploration? So how is it that you first find a place and think, okay, that would actually make for an interesting research project or an interesting artwork?
So I mean, everything starts, of course, from my personal experience, and I'm very fascinated about how we choose or how communities is developing um, the architecture around. And I think wherever you go, you will every city you visit or whatever country you visit, you'll find a specific about that place. And if you the place I'm coming from is very communist, is very brutalist, is very gray, is very industrial. But then I started doing all these residencies, and I had to go to other cities, and I discovered other kinds of environments. And I'm trying to understand a little bit the community and why they choose, for example, in a city like I did a residency in Graz, everything to be perfect and green and so on. And for example, there was a struggle to find materials to build up my works because you cannot find as much garbage on the street as you can find, for example, in Romania. So I had to find a way to show that. And the only way it was, and the only materials I found were actually very perfect, well cut materials that could be used for anything. So the works I did in Austria, for example, reflected how they choose to live, which is very organized, very perfect, and so on. In Berlin, for example, where is everything a little bit more alternative, it was way easier to find materials, way more easier for me to build up my works. So I think the first time when I'm arriving somewhere, like I did also in Rotterdam, I will take my time, walk hours and hours, and I think if I put all the hours I walk to Rotterdam, it's at least every day 25 kilometers by walk. So I'm trying to understand the city, trying to see the architecture. I'm trying to see to look at the balconies of the windows, what people have there when they're doing construction, to look in the garbage bins, what they throw away, and so on. And from there on, I'm starting to build and to give my own vision about interpretation of how that city looks like, or how people live or about architecture. Yeah.
I mean, I wanted to sort of leave it to the end, but you mentioned Rotterdam because I am very curious. I mean, I've been living here for 8 years, and there were like specific things that I found shocking at the beginning, but then the city evolved and it sort of grows on you, and you have a different perspective on it. And usually, when I have people like friends visiting me or artists visiting me, I take them to this, like the sites. So not exactly the back alley, but you have been wandering around alone for very long. So what is your impression of Rotterdam, or what is the thing that struck you most?
So I think first thing that actually struck me most, and I actually remembered, I remembered me a little bit about Berlin. It's about how much this city suffered, and you can see that through the architecture because it's so diverse, and you can see it was made very fast and very different approaches. So it doesn't really have, when you go to Venice, to Paris, to Madrid, you can see it like something that, but here you can see the city suffered a lot, and you can see that through the fact that it's so diverse, and it's a little bit schizophrenic in a way, because it's so many kinds of architecture, and you just go through to the city, and there are empty spaces, and there is an agglomeration of buildings. So it's a little bit, still you can see it's a little bit not yet done, not yet finished after maybe what happened in the Second World War. So I think this is what struck me and reminded me in this way about Berlin, because also in Berlin, when you go, every single neighborhood has another kind of architecture, another kind of living space, like parks, and everything is very different in every part of the city. So I think this is the first. But then what strikes me here is like this need somehow, I think, of the city to make it a very science fiction futuristic. So it's
Mm-hmm.
a bit cold. It's a bit cold from this point of view.
Yeah.
First, it's not very friendly for me. It was not very friendly, but after a few days, I started to understand the city a bit more, and actually, I ended up till now to really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Really interesting to explore it.
Yeah, I understand when sometimes this kind of skyscrapery, well, buildings which are not, sometimes they don't even look like skyscrapers, so they don't have like the tower structure, but they just are big complex. I remember finding them, like you say, kind of cold. Don't, it doesn't feel like they're lived in,
Yeah, exactly.
but they're sort of just there to show. So it's a little bit more of a mix. And
And
I
also,
remember this. Tell me.
and it was very fascinating for me to see how easily they destroy here buildings.
Yeah.
Because everybody I met, including you and Alexi, everybody was telling me they're going to destroy that building or that part of the city or that part of the city in order to build new, bigger, more modern city, which is very interesting. This because I think somehow, even though there is not much old architecture, this kind of loses even more the past of the city. It's just I don't know. It's very interesting because there is kind of trying to raise the past somehow. If it's a little bit of something like it's I don't know. It's interesting.
It's always quite a shock to see documentation of Rotterdam, like by decades, sometimes even by year. For example, I don't know if you've been to the marketplace where the Marktel is,
Yeah,
and there is this huge space for the market there.
yeah.
Up until the 90s, so up until 20 years ago, the trains, the train rails and the metro rails were just above there. So
Okay.
you had this huge tunnel, so you had the trains just passing above it. And I mean, I didn't know it, but then there is a small photographic shop near there on the Mains, near the market square, and they have this huge print and some more historical photographs of Rotterdam, and they have this huge prints, and it took me a while to understand that it was actually the city, that it was just that square and not somewhere else in the Netherlands. So and you use photography as well to in your practice. So it's not only found objects, but also sort of this documentation and rearrangement as well.
Yeah, I like documenting buildings exactly because of this reason because many of them will disappear for a reason or
Hmm.
another, or if they will not disappear, they will be at one point renovated, changed, and so on. And yeah, I like to see the process of this and yeah, take these photos and maybe in 10 years, if I will have the chance to go back and see what's changed there, so somehow
Hmm.
to document the memories of these streets and of the buildings. Yeah, because we chose to surround ourselves with concrete in order to save ourselves from the nature, which is for me very
Hmm.
interesting also because we feel so safe in our homes, but we feel so unsafe in I don't know forest because who knows the mosquito will bite us, and that's why we chose. I mean, this is our natural environment nowadays. It's the cement,
Hmm.
the steel, the glass, and so on. So I'm we are just documenting how we choose to do it, where we choose to work, where we choose to eat, so all these buildings it's a reflection of us as a society. Every city is a reflection of the people living there. So that's very interesting for me. But the nature, wherever you go, there will be trees, there will be flowers. So it's more or less the same because nature it's as it is. But we just develop all these crazy concepts and ideas in order to have a better life, a more I don't know. Um,
Comfortable, yeah,
Comfortable like that.
living space.
Yeah,
But at the same time, you told me that you grew up around a lot of nature and like rough nature.
exactly. Very wild.
So yeah, exactly. Especially like really in the wilderness. So how was it? Like, was it also a shock for you the fact that the fact of this dichotomy of the fact of the buildings and and the concrete, and then the nature, like the wilderness, for example, in Romania. But in cities like Rotterdam and Berlin, you have area, like pocket areas with nature, so nothing to like not that much of a balance. So yeah, I don't know if it's fascinating for you or not.
I mean, so for me, it was always a duality. I really love all these industrial post-communist places and so on, because, well, I was born in this very industrial communist city. But then I spent part of my childhood in the nature, in the Carpathian Mountains. So that's why in my work you'll see a little bit of schizophrenia, because I'm in between these two worlds, and I'm very interested in both worlds. And I'm interested in how my grandmother raised me there, and she took me in the forest to pick up mushrooms in order to have what to eat. But then I was playing in abandoned factories in Romania, and that was the playground that I had when I was as a kid. So these two worlds somehow for me make sense to work to be together, just because they are so mixed in my past. And that's why I'm approaching both. That's why I'm doing also this work with the nature that sometimes takes over the industrial areas, but then sometimes the industrial area destroys the nature, because it's just my duality, it's my story. So from there it starts everything.
And where do you stand? As in, what do you think is the role of man, of humans in that, or if there is a role of humans in this like between nature and
Well,
concrete building?
unfortunately, to just looking around what's happening to this day, the role is a very negative one. We are the bad guys. So yeah, everything around now, it's kind of falling apart if you're thinking about what's happening with the nature nowadays. So I don't think we are the good, we are the superheroes. We are just the bad guys in the movie. So unfortunately, I think, anyways, the nature has the power all the time to take us down, and I don't know why we don't learn from this. We see what's happening all the time around us, and we still destroy the nature, as it's in Romania, a huge problem. And I'm going to do a project about this in autumn. They cut the forests in a very like lots of forests, and the forests in Romania, most of them are virgin, and they're the only ones in Europe that are still not cut since centuries, and unfortunately now they're cutting them a lot. So apparently we don't learn, and I think our role, it's, I don't know, to destroy, unfortunately. Yeah.
To destroy ourselves as well.
Yeah, it's yeah, exactly. And we of course we destroy ourselves, and we give no future to the next coming. Yeah.
So yeah, because one of the works that I adore from you is Under the Grey Dust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like that you were this installation about a garden, like a sort of cementified garden, of how you were saying that. I think it was it was a cement factory there in your hometown.
It was a cement factory in my hometown. So because the pollution because of that cement factory, it was really high. When it was raining, the fruits and the vegetables after the rain, they were getting cemented. It was that bad. So I created this garden where I put fruits and vegetables and flowers, and every day I was just putting a little bit of cement, and another day a bit more and more, until it became kind of like a sculpture, because all these flowers died, plants died because they had no air, but because they still had water inside, the cement, the water in and cemented them. So they became a sculpture in the end. Yeah, and exactly as I said, we humans do things which are strange. So I like to show that somehow, to create those moments again, and to show to the people how it looks from the outside. That garden didn't look good at the end.
Yeah, exactly. And how your, well, friends or people that you know, or just the general public in your hometown perceives that? Like, I guess it's might be sort of normal for them, or like sort of they're familiar with it, right?
The best part, especially from the people who saw my works from my
Hmm.
city, they are coming and telling me more stories to tell.
Really?
Yes. So I always, after I explained them, maybe some of them were not so into art, but just we met and they were asking me. So after that, I was telling them the stories, they were coming with more stories. They were sending me to in more directions about what the problems are there. And this is something I really like to do when I'm in a city too. If there is something that has to do with my subjects, yeah, to go to the people, ask the random people,
Yeah.
and to get the stories so I can tell them. So yeah, I was it's a good feedback generally from this point of view, because people are suffering, and in a city like this one, Turda, many people suffered because of the pollution. So
Hmm.
they are aware, and just a little bit of attention towards those problems might change something. At least
Yeah.
people will at least be aware, and they will do something about it.
And like in 2018, I made a project for the gallery when I was not a curator. And it was about my hometown. And also my hometown is very industrialized, and it's very polluted, but like really like bad pollution, air pollution, soil pollution. And I made a project about all the sort of details that showed that in a way. Not really, but showed the underbelly of what Italy is, which is not always beautiful seaside and mountains. And I showed it here, but at the same time, I always had the idea that if I had showed it in my hometown, I would actually be criticized because I'm not showing the nice part of it.
Okay.
So did you ever come across this kind of feedback?
No, no, never. No, I really never.
That's good.
No. No, because I mean, who knows what I'm doing since forever.
Hmm.
It's maybe yeah, I'm criticizing through my art, or I'm
Yeah.
bringing up stories which affected me in a way. And everything started from a point where at one point I was very sick, and that was the moment I decided I have to tell these stories, and people should not suffer because there is no attention brought to those problems. So
Hmm.
I think maybe this somehow gave me an excuse to be a little bit critical that moment. And from that moment on, I just became more and more critical with problems or with things that I thought should be criticized.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, I never yet got any complaints about the fact that I'm not telling the beautiful parts of Romania, because there is a lot, of course, of beautiful things
Hmm.
about Romania. But this problem they're talking about, of course, I'm talking about specific cities or my city or my experiences. But these are
Yeah.
problems that are happening all around the globe, like the pollution or cancer
Yeah.
or whatever subject I approached. I'm telling them from my very personal point of view, or from the point of view of a person that I've been in contact with. But it's the stories of so many people. So that's why I
Hmm.
choose to tell them that.
Okay. And I remember also that you were included some X-rays in some of the latest work that you did.
Mhm.
So yeah, like well, this might actually sounds like a very silly question, but like, what are your favorite materials beside concrete and flowers?
So well, I'm trying not to throw away things, and the story
Hmm.
with those X-ray things, it was that I had them since maybe 5, 6 years there, and I never ever had an idea what to do with them. And now during the lockdown, I realized I literally have no materials left. I cannot go to the shop. I cannot go buy
That's true.
anything. And then those X-rays were laying there, and I was like, so maybe it's time to create something with them. And that's the moment when I got the idea of building up, not making these collages with flowers and with tape, which were basically about how our body is so fragile in front of certain diseases, and we create all these massive blocks of flats or buildings, but in order to make our body stronger, but then it's just a shell that can be destroyed by a simple virus like this happened. So those X-rays were us, but then you saw there were a lot of architectural structures.
Yeah.
That were the buildings and our body. Those X-rays were from the department of oncology. So most of those people from X-rays were people with different diseases. Cancer disease. So yeah, I'm trying to, when I have materials, I'm trying not to throw them away. I'm keeping them, and look, after 6-7 years, however how much it was since I got them, something comes up. I try not to throw anything away.
So you let them sit there. So you don't sometimes do.
Yeah, and even with works of mine that I hate, at one point, I'm putting them away and wait for the right moment when I either find a way to make them to look as I want, or I was taught once by a professor from Poland that there is no bad art. It shouldn't be. There will always be somebody who will like what you did. So I should never throw anything away. I should just put it there and look at that work again in 1 year or 1 month or whatever. And for sure, something will happen or something will change. And so I'm trying not to throw anything away.
And do you take your artworks apart and reuse the materials as well sometimes?
Yeah. A lot of time. For example, I made this work that literally, took me 1 year to finish it because it was just not as I wanted. I glued stuff, take them down, glued from another work, and mix them up. And in 1 year, at one point, I said, I think
it's ready.
Yeah, exactly.
It's there.
Yeah.
So it's a circular art almost.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. And sometimes even works that I really, really like. In one moment, I'm finished and I really like them. After maybe a few months, I'm looking again at it and I realize I don't like it so much. I'm ripping them apart and creating something else with them. Yeah, it's always a process. And I think a work of art is never finished, in my opinion. I never consider my art finished. So I can put more and more and more, or destroy it and remake it and use it in other parts. And it's always so.
That's interesting.
That's why I'm waiting for that moment when a curator or a collector or whoever says, I want to take that, because if not, who knows what's going to happen with that work in 1 month, because they always change something. So yeah.
Or if it's or if it's with vegetables, it's gonna rot, like you said.
Well, yeah, of course. That happened with the first installation with the garden, because I also used cabbage.
Yeah.
And in like 2 weeks, that's not just that got rotten, but lots of flies and animals came out of those. But it was interesting. For that gallery, because in another gallery, they asked me to use stuff that are not going to smell.
Yeah, that's true. That's also sometimes the weirdness of art, like that you try to have very stable materials that are lasting, but at the same time, like even for photographs, they have even if they're archival prints and whatever, they're gonna decay at some point.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. No, I really love the idea of a work of art that is gonna, after I finish it and somebody takes it, that work of art will have its own life. Not destroy, but like, I don't know, some materials that I use from the construction shops, in times they change a little bit the color. They might break a little bit, but that's the part I like the most, to see how that work will develop with time, what's it's gonna be after it's leaving my studio. So for me, I really like that in I know it's not for everybody, because somebody, when wants to work, they want it to be forever. But for me, it's very important to see the how it's changing with time. That's why I like to do these installations, to document the process of the flower dying, the flower getting rotten, the animals that are coming out. So I'm doing all that process, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, that's also why what I enjoy as well. But yeah, and it's a little bit of a question that is it an installation, or is it a performance, or is this kind of hybrid? But like you said, even artworks that are made to last hundreds of years, they still change with time.
Absolutely.
So you can control it up to a certain point.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. And nowadays people buy ideas, so I think even though that work will change with time, you bought the idea, you have the idea, it's yours, you can have it. And I think that's also very valuable for a person who collects art, to
That's very true.
own that idea and to know that, because the documentation will last forever. So
That's true. Yeah, well, that's actually really interesting. And so we're gonna have an exhibition in November, at the end of November.
yes.
Probably it's gonna be an installation. Let's see. I'm very up for making it something that changes with time. Let's see how, like, in the gallery you do not have much aeration, so maybe if it stinks, it's gonna stay there, and but we'll see. Which is something that you actually cannot render with documentation, like the smell and sometimes the taste of it, like this metallic or cement taste that you have when you work. It's not something that sadly can be rendered with documentation, and it has to be seen. But we'll see for sure. And yeah, so it's gonna be interesting, but it's mostly gonna be yeah, of course within your practice, with what you see. And I don't know, maybe we do it about Rotterdam, maybe we make it about your hometown. And
yeah, I'm already, since our last talk, I'm already cooking ideas. That's why I took this time to really walk a lot around Rotterdam. And yeah, I'm already baking stuff. So
and yeah, and it's a city and always under construction, but you always have it very closed off. Like you don't have too much the freedom to collect materials, or maybe not as much as in other countries.
there is like this. I've seen where are the construction sites. They have the containers where you can take stuff, but yeah, it's not on the street laying down. That's true.
Yeah.
But this is even more interesting, as I said, with Austria. It was impossible to find materials, but then I had to find a way to show that city somehow. At the end, there is always opportunities. There's always ways to. And the city, if you're looking and paying attention, it's always gonna give you stories to tell. So yeah, and this city has lots of stories, I think. I just have to figure it out.
Literally cement it. But we'll see also what maybe we when they tear down the building where the gallery is now, you're gonna come here, we're gonna call you. It's like, there is a lot of material available now where the gallery was. So we reconstruct the gallery somewhere else.
Yeah, that could be interesting. It's very interesting, the fact that they decide to destroy so much in order to rebuild stuff.
Yeah, in between gentrification, in between the fact that, like you said, it was built very, very quickly. It had to be built so quickly to be able to have people back in the city. So sometimes also the buildings are, well, old but functional up to a certain point, and not built with the best materials either. Which makes them decay a lot faster than, well, of course, than the skyscrapers or something that are built in concrete. But yeah, I do agree with you. And maybe sometimes even the use of some materials is not going to be. They're going to disappear, I think, within time. especially in Rotterdam. So that might also be an archive of materials, not only for the photography.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. But I was also wondering, because this city was so destroyed after the Second World War, what happened with the buildings, with the ruins?
With the urban planning.
No, not with the ruins. Literally, with the material of the ruins. Where did they take it and put it?
Huh, that I don't know, actually.
Because in Berlin, for example, they took the buildings outside of Berlin in a forest, and now there is a hill called Teufelberg, where and now it's a hill and it's a forest on that hill. But going through the forest, you see pieces of building coming out of the ground, because there is where they put the whole city after it was destroyed, what they couldn't use. So now it's a hill, but yeah, you know that underneath it's the Berlin buildings.
It's a Berlin building as well.
Yeah. So you see pieces of buildings coming out of the ground. So I was wondering what happened with the
materials. I don't know. Also because it was mostly bricks. Like the city center of Rotterdam was built like Amsterdam, so it was mostly red bricks.
Maybe they reused it somehow, parts of it.
Maybe, could be. That's actually very interesting. I had not thought about it.
Yeah, many cities had to take their garbage somewhere, like after that war. So it's a very interesting.
Well, more research to do to make for the on the top. Amazing. Well, I mean, thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for the talk. It was really interesting, and it's amazing how even with Natalia, you know, I've been working with her for, I don't know, a year and a half now, and with the live you find new things, and also here. So yeah, we're gonna do it, everybody, because it's amazing. I find new things as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yeah, so that's gonna be it. And next week we're gonna have someone else to be our guest. And well, I mean, if our public wants to come and see your exhibition, it's gonna be at the end of November. Maybe we're gonna be able to have an event for the opening. Hopefully. I don't know, but let's hope so. Let's hope so. And yeah, well, thank you so much. Thank you again.
Thank you.
I'll see you soon. Bye, Liviu. Bye.